Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Leonardo Bonanni. I'm the CEO, founder of Sourcemap, and I couldn't be happier to welcome you all here to the 2021, the first ever Supply Chain Transparency Conference. It's been a while coming, and supply chain transparency in general has come along a long way in the last 10 years or so. If you think back 10 years ago, you couldn't even Google supply chain transparency. It wasn't even a thing. And these days, I think just a couple of weeks ago, the White House had a conference on supply chain transparency. What's happened? A lot has happened in the last 10 years to bring us to this conference today. 10.5 years ago, a massive tsunami devastated the coast of Northeast Japan and sent global supply chains into a complete tailspin. And that's why a month later, I founded Sourcemap. It was a company that was meant to help manage the impacts of global trade through transparency, supply chain transparency. A couple of years later, we moved here to New York, where you see me today, to an office that was reopened only after a massive storm flooded this entire neighborhood with about 5 meters of salt water. And of course, the last 2 years has been the most disruption we've ever seen in global supply chains as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. And it really left no industry, no part of the world untouched for the first time ever. Obviously, these disruptions, time after time, underscore the need for more supply chain visibility. And you'd think that's the reason we're here today, but it's not. At least it's not the only reason. Long before the tsunami, some of the biggest companies in the world had already started making major commitments to source responsibly and to source transparently. Commitments to buy certified sustainable materials, commitments to end deforestation, to end forced labor, and commitments to disclose their supply chains to the public. And today and tomorrow, you're going to hear from these companies. And in parallel with these commitments from companies, governments around the world also started to put supply chain transparency into regulatory processes, processes like conflict minerals reporting and modern slavery laws, and supply chain mapping and due diligence for customs compliance. And today, you'll get to hear more about the rapidly evolving legal landscape that surrounds supply chain transparency. And then finally, supply chain transparency is here thanks to technology. Technology that makes it possible for a company to map and trace all of its products through thousands of suppliers, through hundreds of thousands of farms and mines and factories and warehouses. The cloud, the mobile internet that connect us from every corner of the globe, and incredibly powerful analytics that allow us to make sense of that data, the huge amount of data that we get through supply chain transparency. And you'll hear about those technologies and how companies are getting value out of that data tomorrow. Okay, I'm almost done. I'll just remind everybody, supply chain transparency isn't about transparency at all. It's about impact, right? It's about making sure that global trade can have a positive impact on everybody in the supply chain, from the first mile to the last. And transparency is what we need to enable the kind of collaboration on a global scale to make that impact happen. And that's why we're all here today. Over 1,000 of you registered for this conference to make collaboration possible for impact and to make transparency happen. It's going to be a great couple of days. Welcome again to the 2021 Supply Chain Transparency Conference. Let's get started. For our opening keynote, I'd like to introduce Luc Beerens, the Global Sourcing Director at Mars. Luc, take it from here.
Thank you, Leo. I had to unmute myself. No, thanks for the introduction. Taylor, if you can put on the first slide, please.
Yes, we'll do that now.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning and good afternoon all. As Leo said, I'm the I'm the Sustainable Sourcing Director for Mars. And what that means is that I'm supporting the procurement teams at Mars in integrating sustainability in our sourcing strategies and decisions. Today, I want to talk about why we care about sustainability before making the link to supply chain transparency and Sourcemap. And I will share 3 whys. The first one is climate change. So climate change, the UN, and I think most of us have seen that called Code Red a few weeks ago. We are already at 1 degree of warming, and we can all see the impacts of this through severe weather events, as Lee was mentioning. We are not heading into the right direction. We are heading for 3 to 4 degrees of warming instead of the 1.5. So we're not on track, and the future is uncertain. That's the first challenge our world is facing. The second one, deforestation. So an area the size of Scotland is being lost every year due to deforestation. So this accelerates climate change, but also has a massive impact on biodiversity. Third one is drought. So human activity, and especially agriculture, is draining the aquifers, and more rivers never reach the coast. There are disputes over water rights, and people and food supply is being displaced. Plastic, it's not getting any better, by the way. The studies show that there will be more plastic than fish in the sea by 2040. And for every meter of coastline, we will see 1 kilogram of plastic. And we don't even know what the impact of this will be on our food supply and on human health. Forced labor, or modern slavery, as some people call it. So millions of workers are paying to get a job, and they are working in often unacceptable conditions, also in our supply chains. Working for unacceptable conditions, extreme hours, and not even have the freedom to leave their job. Next one, women's rights. So too many women have little hope of education and are left without rights or left without paid work. And finally, I'm not cheering you up, am I? Child labor. So children are doing hazardous work and working instead of going to school. And that has, of course, a very harmful effect to their development and for the rest of their lives. So on all of these issues, we clearly have a moral responsibility to act. So the first why is for society. It's for all of us. It's for our kids, for our grandchildren, and beyond. The second why is because it makes good business sense. And let me talk about a few business reasons. Starting from the bottom left, it can save us money. We already see that in some cases where we have done good deals on buying renewable electricity through wind power or solar power at better rates than fossil fuel. But most of it we will see in the long term when companies with smaller carbon footprint and smaller plastic footprint will have to pay less taxes and less fees. The second reason is license to operate. There will be more and more scrutiny on the supply chains from which we source our materials. And how we are handling and how we are tackling issues. Could be deforestation, could be child labor, or any other of the issues that we saw previously. And we will soon be reaching a point where we need to prove that our goods and services that we buy are clean. Reputation. Working on sustainability and having sustainability issues in our supply chain can move our reputation up or down. We already see that for Mars. So our sustainability program and the progress that we are making has already boosted Mars' reputation. And it helps us in a variety of ways. And one of them is talent. People that are looking for jobs are getting more and more critical for the companies, to the companies that they want to work for. They expect companies to have a purpose. And working on sustainability is a very, very powerful proof point of having a purpose. And also our own associates. They feel very much engaged about the work that we're doing on sustainability. And that's one of the key reasons why they want to stay at Mars. And finally, growth. We know that consumers care more and more about sustainability. And some of them are prepared to change their purchasing decisions in favor of more sustainable brands. And all of us, or at least we, would like to see more of that. But that consumer demand will grow. It will grow for sure. So the second reason is business. The third why is working on sustainability is at the heart of the company that we want to be. So the Mars family, a few years ago, have aligned that they want to deliver 4 things together and not just growing and making profit. They believe that progressing on all of these 4 quadrants will help to deliver long-term performance. So these are the 3 whys. So where then to focus our efforts? Now, if we go to the next slide, clearly the biggest impact is in the raw materials or in the materials and the services that we buy, as this chart illustrates. Yes, there's work to be done at our own factories. There's also work to be done at our suppliers and the supplier production facilities. But most of the impact, social or environmental, is at the origin level, at the farms that we source from, the plantations that we source from. So supply chain transparency is key to understand, to identify, to acknowledge, and to address the risks that we have in our supply chains of the materials and the services that we buy. And we have wrestled for a number of years with spreadsheets and sending emails to our suppliers to understand better, where our materials are coming from. But we decided a few years ago that it's better to partner up with Sourcemap and put a robust supply chain transparency solution in place. And we are looking at delivering the following objectives. First of all, to understand the risks. And not only for us to understand the risks, but also to make that accessible to our suppliers. And those risks is a key input into our sourcing strategies. The second one is knowledge management. So too often information gets lost in personal files and folders. And when people move on to other jobs in our business, that information is often lost. So having this crucial information in one place is more than a great help. It creates efficiency, creates credibility, and it creates trust in our data. And the last one is performance tracking. The Sourcemap tool helps us to see if we are on track in addressing the issues in our supply chain. It helps us to show the individual performance of our suppliers. And soon, our suppliers will be able to see their performance versus their competitors. And of course, we are looking forward to the new functionalities that Sourcemap is working on, and Leo and his team will share more in the next 2 days. And with that, I want to thank you and open it up for Q&A. Taylor.
Amazing. Thank you, Luc, so much. My name, just by means of quick introduction, is Taylor Ralph, and I'm a strategic accounts manager at Sourcemap. Have been working with the business for a number of years at this point, and a number of those years have been spent specifically with Luc, working to develop their programs at Mars. And so it's a pleasure to kind of zoom out here and participate in this conference in collaboration with you, Luc. So thank you so much for participating. We're going to open up a Q&A session for about the next 20 minutes we have time for. If we need more time, that's no problem. We have kind of some spillover time available if needed. And then the next session begins at 12:15, just for everyone's awareness. So there is a Q&A box in the Zoom. If you have any questions, please do drop them in there. We'll be moderating those throughout the process of the Q&A. And we have a couple of questions that have already been dropped in there. So we'll just go ahead and get started, Luc. And so one thing that you didn't mention, Luc, is just how long you've been working at Mars. I think you've had the distinct opportunity to watch a company like Mars that is so innovative change drastically over the course of that tenure. So I believe it's been almost 30 years, correct me on the number there, that you've been working at Mars in various roles, and was hoping that you could spend some time speaking to some of the ways in which the company has changed throughout that time, things that potentially have surprised you for the audience.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell my age, but you just did. But indeed, 28, almost 29 years with the company. I was a buyer myself for long. And yes, how did the company change? I think two things come to mind. One is we always have been a very inclusive company. Didn't share a lot about, how our business was doing. It's a family-owned business, so we didn't have to. But the company has become, very how do you say that? Less inclusive, and is reaching out to external stakeholders much more than what we ever have done before. And has the ambition to become very transparent in what we are doing, transparent in where our materials are coming from and the issues that go with it, and the progress that we are making. Secondly, and that's maybe more of a recent change, is our purpose. For long, our business was about healthy growth and making profit. I'm very pleased with the new direction that Mars is taking, and the Mars family, the fourth and the fifth generation, had a big say in that. Is that they see the purpose of the company beyond that, and that delivering positive societal impact and being seen as a trusted partner, both internally and externally, are equally important deliverables in order to be successful in the long term. So I would call those out as the two biggest changes I've seen in those years.
That's great. And actually, it's relevant to a couple of follow-up questions that the audience is bringing. One, to your point about hoping to be more transparent. I think you're engaging partners and you're working more collaboratively with multiple stakeholders, but ultimately, can you speak to the goal of Mars to publicly disclose the information that you're collecting, even if it's a long-term public strategy with consumers and other stakeholders who may not be in those internal collaborative conversations?
Yeah, I think a good example is the our palm oil supply chain, and yes, and there were NGOs that helped to accelerate that disclosure. But we are very transparent in, and we have disclosed our palm supply chain, and actually also has led to a drastic change in the way we source our palm oil. We were sourcing palm oil from over 1,000 mills And with that amount of mills, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to manage all of the issues, deforestation and human rights. So we decided to drastically simplify that supply chain. And today we're sourcing from less than 100 mills with the ambition to reduce that to 50 in order to have a fighting chance to tackle the issues in the palm supply chain. And we're going to do that for other materials as well, and some moving faster than others.
And ultimately, is there an effort or an interest across the programs that you're managing currently to publicly disclose any of the information relative to those suppliers that you're working with, whether that's public facing maps or public commitments? How do you engage with your consumers to talk about your progress?
Yeah, our plan to engage with consumers is to communicate through our brands, and that is not happening at the speed that we would like to. We think there is more opportunity for our brands to leverage the work that we are doing. That is gradually changing. So yeah, through our brands, we will communicate about the hero materials and the key materials that we source, and bring that to life through through maps and farmers and farmer families that we have in our supply chain.
Great, and then to that effect, in order to kind of disclose in a way that you'd like to at Mars, it requires collecting data that's of high quality. And so some of the audience members are asking, and this is of course a perennial question in this space, but how do you ensure that the data that you're receiving is of high quality?
Great question. Currently, it's a mixed bag. We are not always receiving the right quality of data. So that requires follow-up. So if suppliers are not able to identify where the materials are coming from, that is not where we stop. It means that the buyer will have to follow up with that supplier to be able to get more granular information, because that information is needed in order to assess the environmental and social risks, and then to take the appropriate action. And that action can be indeed switching suppliers. The action can be switching sourcing regions. In most cases, it is continuing to source where we source from, but together with our suppliers, with local implementers, NGOs, to set up programs that help to address that issue, be it social or environmental, and to truly make change to the issues in this world.
And alongside that theme of kind of theory of change over time and continuous improvement, I think you spoke briefly to the types of programs that you set up to facilitate suppliers to do their best work in accordance with the commitments that you've made as a company. Can you speak to how you incentivize suppliers to share information? I feel like Mars has put a unique amount of intention around working in collaboration with suppliers, but would just love to hear you speak more to that.
Yeah, good question again. We expect from our suppliers that they share their upstream supply chain with us. Again, not everybody is doing that. Not everybody is doing that with the right quality of data. But those suppliers that continuously not participate or continuously deliver bad quality data won't be the suppliers that we will continue working with. And that's becoming more and more clear. And that's what we communicate more and more clearly to our supplier base. We also, we do that not only on supply chain transparency, we also are doing that on climate action. We recently launched a program on climate action where we help our suppliers to set ambitious climate goals. Now, it's currently voluntary, but soon that will become more of a mandatory requirement. And those suppliers that hop on that train now will very likely be the suppliers that will benefit from more business.
And so another question just came in, and I know we've been speaking to this subject, but do you have any specific example of some of the incentives that you've provided to some of your suppliers, or maybe even down to the farmer level, to motivate them to invest in more sustainable practices?
The incentives in most cases is more business and continuation of business. Our business luckily is very healthy and it's growing. So volume as a result grows as well. And those suppliers that share our values and share our strategy, and together with us work on better supply chain transparency and together tackle the issues, will be suppliers that will get the volume that or the business that that goes with our with us. With the growth that we are having as a business. On top of that, as said, there will be suppliers that won't make, and that will lead to more business for those suppliers that remain. And those are normally the biggest incentives. If you talk about farmers, that's a different story. To get farmers working on water saving or carbon reduction, that needs financial incentives like premium prices, technical support, cash advance, etc., etc. So that's a different ball game.
So I think also to speak to another relevant question is, part of the challenge, I think, from the supplier's perspective is that there are so many brands who are starting to pay attention to these types of issues, as well as international collaborations across nonprofit organizations. Are there any stories that you may be able to share, or philosophies surrounding pre-competitive partnerships that have been useful in incentivizing suppliers? Some suppliers struggle with needing to provide different pieces of information across various different brands. So that is something else that's come up in the audience.
Yeah, no, I think the most recent example is the coalition that we built end of last year on climate action, together with McCormick and PepsiCo, and Guidehouse, which is a consultant on climate action. So this is a coalition where we are engaged. Each of us is engaging our key suppliers to set climate targets. And we all come with the same ask, and we all offer the same support structure, which is free of charge to our suppliers, to guide them through that process of footprinting, target setting. And now that coalition has grown with new companies like Nestle, like Dr. Pepper, Burger King, Pizza Hut, etc. And the other obvious candidates like Unilever, Danone, and the retailers are being approached as we speak. So it's a good example, I think, of working in a pre-competitive environment with one ask to our suppliers.
Yeah, that's a great example. Can you repeat, just for everyone, the name of that coalition? Or that?
The coalition it's an ugly name, actually. It's called SLOCT, so it's Supplier Leadership on Climate Action. What I can do is share the link after my session, which you can share with the audience.
Amazing, thank you. Great, so moving through this list, great questions here. So thank you everyone who's participating and adding questions. I think a lot of those pre-competitive partnerships, international development collaborations tend to focus more broadly on really high volume commodities. So commodities that we're all familiar with that have big international supply chain issues like child labor, deforestation, cocoa, coffee, oil seeds, and so on. One of the audience members asked if you could speak a little bit more towards the Mars approach to agricultural commodities that are purchased in smaller volumes. So spices, fruits and vegetables, those that get less attention than palm oil or cocoa and other big commodities.
Yeah. So yeah, we also have been focusing on those materials where the biggest issues are. And those are the materials where we have high volume and are sourcing from regions with significant social and environmental issues like deforestation, child labor, income challenges. And then, yes, in our case, you're talking about palm oil, cocoa, sugar, also animal proteins. And the smaller ingredients, they are not being ignored, but we will, work on those when we are satisfied with the programs and the progress that we are making on the bigger ingredients, because that's where we can make the biggest difference. And also, this is where our business is, at risk. So it doesn't mean we're not going to work on the other ingredients, but it's currently not a priority.
Understood. So also relevant there is a question around how you benchmark suppliers. So for those suppliers that you are, or those commodities where you are doing data collection in large volumes with suppliers, how are you actually tracking the progress? Do you have some sort of scorecard? How do you organize the big risks, maybe categorically? And what are the tools that you use to support this benchmarking?
All right. Those are a few questions in one. Let's start with the risks. So we are using third-party risk assessments. So coming from WRI or from Maplecroft, and we customize it. That risk, those risk assessments are being visualized in Sourcemap through a map. So you see if a country or a region colors red or green, simple as that. And that's accessible or visible both to us, to our buyers, but also to our suppliers. So we all have one common understanding of, okay, this supply chain or this area, sourcing area, is at risk or not at risk for human rights issues, for income, for deforestation, for water stress. That's what we're doing on the risk side. On the scorecarding and the benchmarking, we have two key programs to address sustainability issues and to deliver performance improvement. One is focusing on the manufacturing facilities of our suppliers. The other one is focusing on the ultimate origin of where those suppliers are sourcing from. And we have, without going into too much detail, we have KPIs that then measure the progress that we're making at supplier level and at origin level. And at origin level, you can link that to the supplier. So each of the supplier has two scores. One of them is their performance in their own manufacturing facilities. The other one is their performance at how they are addressing the issues in their upstream supply chains, together with us and with NGOs and with local implementers, etc. And those two are being compared with their competitors for a certain category.
Great. Yeah. And I want to also just emphasize the point that you made at the beginning of that response, which is the importance of making sure that that is a transparent process with suppliers, in that you share with them the benchmarking that they've fallen into. They understand very clearly from their perspective what risk they're being assessed against. So would just want to emphasize that point. Another question from the audience, and I think we're still okay to continue. There is some spillover time, but just as a note of time, it is now 45 past the hour. So we have another 10 or 15 minutes to keep going through these questions.
Yet, right?
Not quite yet. There's a lot of engagement here, a lot of good questions. Kind of zooming out a little bit, or I guess you can get as specific as you think is necessary, but relative to those benchmarking tools, the way in which that you're communicating back with suppliers, how they're performing, and the process over time, as Mars has started doing this work with suppliers, what are some of the biggest insights that you've gotten over the years mapping your supply chain, and if any of those insights were particularly surprising?
I think for some materials, we already knew what the issues were, even before we started to use a supply chain transparency solution like Sourcemap. So for cocoa, we already, as an example, we were fully aware of the issues of the in the origins that we source from. But for other materials, which we now are bringing on the Sourcemap platform, we're getting more and more insights into where our materials are coming from, and insights that are very valuable because risks are surfacing that we weren't aware of. And we still have a long way to go. So there are materials that we still have to map and see what risks are there, and does that lead to a change in the way we source our materials? Can we continue the way we source our materials today, or do we have to change certain suppliers, change sourcing areas, and often it's a combination of all of these, work with a selected group of suppliers to address the issues in the regions where we source from, which is the more meaningful route.
So a lot of questions here on assessment. I think all of us here understand that in order to make meaningful change and actually remediate any issues that we find in the supply chain, we actually need to know what they are. And there are many ways of getting to that information. So we've talked about tools that you've used and leveraged to get this information from suppliers, ways in which you've collaborated with other brands. And then different benchmarking categorizational tools that you've applied and risk. Another comment or question from the audience is how you see existing certification schemes, so Rainforest Alliance, Fair Trade, and other, and to what extent you rely on these to assess your suppliers and your supply chain.
We have been focusing more on outcomes than on compliance. So certification is often not the strategic of the solution to tackle the issues that we see. We think more is needed than only a certificate. Having said that, and that's a bit of the challenge that we currently are facing, when it comes to consumer communication and claims, certification is a very powerful tool that satisfies, and in our case, our legal department to allow certain claims on our brands. So long story short, the combination of both verification/certification and intervention programs that truly deliver the change to environmental and social issues, I think is a powerful combination to have, because that will both deliver desired impact and will help us to communicate in a robust way through our brands what we are doing.
Great, thank you. Going to zoom out a little bit again with this next question and speak more to Mars's context. A question around how you help other internal stakeholders and company leadership understand the importance of investing in supply chain transparency, and to what extent this philosophy or culture is built into your business.
Yeah, so going back, it actually starts with the company purpose. So the 4 quadrants, which already show to everybody that positive societal impact is, and a trusted partner are as important as profit and growth. But in addition to that, I think what works is to translate sustainability issues into other deliverables like supply security, quality, long-term resilience of farmers. So if we work on sustainability issues, we do reduce supply risks. And that means we can keep our factories running and we can continue to sell our brands. That often resonates with a lot of internal stakeholders, in addition to doing good for people and planet. So translated into what sustainability delivers in addition to doing good for people and planet, what does it deliver for our business? And that often helps in creating alignment internally.
One other thing that I happen to have visibility into from conversations, Luc, is a comment that potentially in the future, Mars Inc. will be thinking about linking this type of social and environmental progress to internal incentives like pay. Is that something that you can share more information around? It seems radical. And I feel like, of course, that type of incentivization, linking this type of data to KPIs and performance, how did those conversations start at Mars, and kind of where are they now?
Yeah, I must admit that, you know, we are not the first company doing that. Several years ago, I think it was DSM talking about having, you know, sustainability in the remuneration package of their senior leaders. We have been working on this for quite some time, and yes, that will now happen as of next year, starting with carbon. So the progress that we are making on reducing our carbon footprint will have an impact on the bonuses that our senior leaders are receiving, and that will also help in driving the sustainability agenda. And yeah, we're going to start with carbon, but also the other sustainability issues will or can be translated into KPIs that go into the remuneration packages of our senior leaders. And then we are walking the talk.
Thank you for sharing. That's really great. I'm going to go back to just a couple of questions that followed up on conversations we've been having. One is a question from the audience about industries or commodities that don't necessarily have alternative sources for their suppliers with good transparency. So one of the things that you shared is that should a supplier not necessarily be compliant with sharing the data that you're looking for, there is the alternative to select new suppliers. So if there's anything that you can share about that relative to alternatives.
Yeah. So if you are, you know, a single supplier, or if it is only one region where you get your material from, I think vanilla and Madagascar is a good example, then yes, you automatically move into a strategic relationship with your supplier. Now, in the case that strategic relationship is not balanced, and let's say the power, it's an ugly word, but it's too much at the supplier end, and the supplier doesn't want to, you know, work on sustainability issues or transparency, then the solution is to create a coalition and to have a stronger voice. You know, that's what we're doing on climate action now. So yeah, it's correct. You don't always have, you know, an option to change sourcing to other suppliers or to other regions. But this is where I think you first enter into, you know, a strategic relationship with that supplier. And if that doesn't help, call in the help of other off-takers.
Thank you. Another follow-up from our conversation about certifications, question from the audience on, do you think certifications will be replaced by norms such as the EU ISO norm on sustainable cocoa or the African ARS?
I'm gonna park that one.
That's no problem. No, that's no problem. It's an interesting question, very specific, but no problem at all. I guess at this point, so we have a few minutes left. There are no, I believe, other audience questions that I'm seeing. So if there are any kind of last words, Luc, that you want to share with this group and those who are participating today, potentially share a little bit about what's on the horizon for Mars. What do you see embedded into your sustainable sourcing strategy in the next 5 to 10 years?
Where I hope we will be in 5 to 10 years is that, you know, sustainability or sustainable sourcing is not a separate function or organization, but that sustainability is truly embedded in, you know, the hearts so already in the hearts, but also in the minds and in the processes of our procurement teams. So same as what happened with quality years and years ago, sustainability automatically comes to mind when buyers are buying materials and services. And of course supported by subject matter experts on social or environmental issues. Secondly, I wish and hope that we have made quite a lot of progress on mobilizing our suppliers on climate action. We started this year, with the suppliers that we currently have engaged, we already have 25% of our carbon footprint covered. Now, that doesn't mean we reduced it by 25%, but if our suppliers follow through on their targets, we will have reduced our carbon footprint by 25% in a few decades. Now, I wish that will increase to 90% in 5 to 10 years. Not only because it helps us as a business, but I think this is truly needed in order to stop this planet from warming, and we all have to do a bit. Thirdly, is that we will be able to communicate in a very simple way with our consumers and through our brands, what we are doing, so that consumers can make conscious choice what brands they prefer to buy, and hopefully our brands will be recognized as a sustainable sourced product, and will have its existence on shelf and will still be bought by our consumers. So that's what I expect to happen in the next 5 to 10 years.